My name is Laura Bennett. I'm 36. 2 Thanksgivings ago, my husband used a DNA test to tell our family our daughter was not his. Evan stood before dessert with the report in his hand. Our daughter Katie was still sitting at the table with a fork in her hand. My sister Paige leaned toward me and said, "Laura, just tell the truth." She never looked at Katie. Evan did. Then he said, "You put another man's child at my table." I folded my napkin once. I did not touch the report. But here's what Evan didn't know. The child tied to that DNA report was not Katie. It was Noah, Paige's son, and the father listed beside Noah's sample was Evan. That is why I am sitting here telling you this now. I am telling it because the people who call you dramatic are often the same people counting on you to stay quiet. So if you have ever been shamed by relatives who knew exactly where to cut, please like this story and subscribe, because someone else may need to hear that staying calm does not mean staying guilty. Evan chose the table. He chose the audience. He chose the child he wanted to shame. It did not start with the report. It started with a doorbell, a baby bag, and my husband speaking to Paige's son in a voice he had stopped using with our own daughter. Let me take you back to that first evening. Before I knew the small kindnesses in my kitchen had already been turned against me. I thought I was making room for family. I was making room for a secret. The first evening Paige brought Noah to my house. She did not ask if it was a good time. She rang the doorbell at 6:30 with a baby bag on one shoulder and a grocery store pie in her hand. Evan opened the door before I could wipe my hands. He looked past Paige and bent down toward Noah like the whole night had been waiting for that child. "Hey buddy," he said. Soft, patient. The voice hit me before I had a name for it, because he had not used that voice with Katie in months. We lived in a quiet Ohio suburb where people noticed when you left your trash cans out too long. Our house was not fancy, but it was steady. I worked as a school librarian. I labeled spines, tracked missing books, and remembered which child needed the dinosaur section after a hard morning. Evan sold medical equipment and knew how to make himself sound helpful in any room. Paige was my younger sister. In our family, Paige was the storm everyone checked on, and I was the roof everyone expected to hold. That night, Paige set the pie on my counter and said she just needed to breathe for a minute. A minute became dinner. Dinner became a bath for Noah in our upstairs bathroom. Evan carried the baby bag as if he had packed it himself. Katie stood near the hallway with a homework folder against her chest. She waited for her father to notice the math test she had brought home. He stepped around her to find Noah's pajamas. In my family, responsibility made you useful, not loved. I softened that truth for years. Paige had a hard life. Evan was being kind. Katie was old enough to understand. That was what I told myself. Because one small hurt is easier to excuse than a pattern everyone keeps feeding. The pattern settled fast. When Paige's car needed repairs, I paid the mechanic because she cried on my porch. At Sunday dinner, she thanked Evan for saving her again. He did not correct her. He put his hand on the back of her chair and said, "That's what family does." I was standing at the sink with the receipt still in my purse. Another time, Paige disappeared for 2 days after texting that she had hit a wall. Noah stayed with us. I packed his lunch. I washed his small socks. I took him to urgent care when his cough turned rough at midnight. Evan signed the check-in sheet before I could reach the counter. The nurse called him Dad by mistake. He laughed too loudly. I remember that laugh because Paige did not laugh when I told her later. She just looked at Evan, then looked away. Katie gave up space in smaller ways. Her playroom became the room where Noah's toys could stay for convenience. Her cereal went on a higher shelf because Noah liked the box. Her Saturday movie was changed because Noah cried at the first one. Every time I started to say something, Evan gave me the same warning in the same careful voice. "Don't make a scene, Laura." Paige learned to go still when he said it. My mother learned to talk over the pause. My father was the only person who never asked me to shrink so Paige could feel comfortable. He had died 2 years before that Thanksgiving, and I still heard him in practical things. He kept warranties in envelopes. He wrote dates on freezer bags. He saved originals. When I was a girl, I teased him for it. He told me, "Truth gets tired when people handle it too much." Then he tapped the drawer where he kept the real papers. After he passed, he left me a small cedar box. It still smelled like pencil shavings and old closets. I used it for things I could not throw away but did not want loose in the house. Katie's first library card went in there. My father's watch went in there. A thank you note from a student went in there. Later, A scrap of paper from a DNA kit would go in there too. The kits showed up in our kitchen in early October. Evan brought home 3 white boxes and dropped them beside the coffee maker. He called them ancestry kits, but the order page on the side said relationship testing. I was making Katie's lunch. Paige was at our table with Noah, cutting his pancake into pieces so small they looked counted. Evan slid one box toward Katie and one toward Noah. He kept the third near his elbow. I asked why Noah needed one. Evan smiled without looking at me. Kids like seeing where they come from. Katie looked up. Can I do mine later? Sure, I said. Evan answered at the same time. No, let's get it done today. The word done stayed with me. Not finished, not sent, done. It sounded like an errand he wanted off his list. That evening, after Paige left and Katie went upstairs, I cleaned the kitchen. One box was open by the sink. One plastic tube was missing. A small white label had stuck to the damp counter. I almost wiped it into the trash. Then I saw the numbers printed on it. They were not a name, they were not a result, just a code. Still, my fingers stopped. I dried the label on a paper towel. I placed it in my father's cedar box. I did not know what it meant. I only knew Evan had become too interested in a game he claimed was harmless. The thing he always mocked me for keeping small papers was the thing he forgot to fear. 6 weeks before Thanksgiving, Evan stopped joking about the DNA kits. He started watching Katie in odd little pieces. At breakfast, he stared at the cowlick near her temple. In the car, he asked if anyone in my family had green eyes. One night, while she was doing homework, he asked her if she knew what blood type she was. Katie looked at me because she thought she had failed a question. I said, "She's 12, Evan." He rinsed his glass and said, "Don't make a scene, Laura." Paige changed too. She became gentle in a way that felt rehearsed. She called me one afternoon while I was shelving books at work and said Evan deserved peace. Not truth, not answers. Peace. I asked her what he had told her. She took a long breath and said, "I just think you should be honest before it gets worse." A student came to my desk holding a book with a torn cover. I pressed my thumb over the rip so I would not press it into my own palm. That call answered one question. Paige was not outside the thing that was happening. She had a place inside it. My mother made her place clear the next Sunday. She came over with a casserole I had not asked for and stood by my stove, lowering her voice as if the walls might take sides. She said Paige was fragile. She said Thanksgiving should be calm. She said sometimes a wife had to let a husband be upset without turning the whole family against him. She never asked why Evan was upset. She never asked why Katie had been crying after dinner. Katie began to notice before anyone said the word DNA out loud. Children can feel a room change before adults admit the furniture has moved. She came into my bedroom one night with wet hair and one sock on. She asked why her dad did not look at her the same way. I was folding towels. I put the towel down. I told her she had done nothing wrong. She waited for more, but more would have made her carry an adult lie. So I kissed the top of her head and said it again. Nothing wrong. I did not sleep much after that. By the first week of November, Evan wanted Thanksgiving at our house. That was new. He usually complained about the work. This time he made the guest list himself. He added cousins I had not seen in 2 years. He invited my mother before I did. He told Paige to bring Noah early so the kids could settle in. When I asked why he wanted so many people there, he placed the carving knife beside the serving platter and smiled at the clean edge. "I think we should clear the air." There was no air to clear. There was a room to fill. I did not argue. I looked at the cedar box on the shelf near the back door. It was small enough to miss if you did not know what it held. Evan had built his plan around the idea that I would panic in front of witnesses. He forgot I had been a librarian for 12 years. I knew how to wait for the missing page. I knew how to notice when the wrong card had been slipped into the wrong pocket. 2 days before Thanksgiving, Paige came by with a pumpkin pie and Noah's blue sweater folded over her arm. She said she wanted him to look nice for family pictures. Katie was at the kitchen table writing place cards in gold marker. Paige picked up Noah's card and smiled too long. Then she picked up Katie's. She set it down without a word. Katie saw it. So did I. That night, after everyone slept, I opened the cedar box again. The little white label was still there. A row of numbers. A scrap most people would have thrown away. I did not know yet how ugly Thanksgiving would become, But I knew this much. Evan had chosen an audience, Paige had chosen a side, and my daughter was about to be used as proof in a story written by people who had stopped treating her like a child. So I kept the label. I kept quiet. And I watched the table get set. The next morning, I did what I always did when a number bothered me. I checked it. I waited until Evan left for work and Katie got on the school bus. Then I took the little white label out of my father's cedar box and laid it on the kitchen table. It was nothing dramatic, just a strip of paper with a code on it, but I had spent 12 years teaching children how to find the right book by the right number. A wrong number in the wrong place can change the whole story. Evan used the family computer for everything he thought was too boring for a phone. Receipts, hotel confirmations, school forms he promised to fill out and forgot. I opened the browser history and saw the testing company's website. He had not cleared anything. He thought he had swept the room clean. He had left the broom in the corner. I clicked the account page. 3 kits had been ordered. 3 kits had been activated. Katie's name was on one. Noah's name was on one. Evan's name was on one. I wrote each code on a yellow sticky note. I did not trust my memory. I did not trust my anger either. Anger is loud. And loud things make mistakes. I matched the code from the scrap in my cedar box to the list on the screen. It was not Katie's code. It was Noah's. For a moment, I just sat there with my hands flat on the table. The house made its ordinary sounds around me. The refrigerator clicked. The heat came on. A bus hissed at the corner. Nothing in the world changed its rhythm just because mine did. I did not say the worst thought out loud. Not yet. I printed the account page. I placed the scrap of label beside it. I took a picture of both on my phone. Then I put the original back in the cedar box and slid the box behind the cookbooks. If Evan searched my purse, he would find nothing. If he checked my phone, he would see a photo unless he knew which folder to open. But if he did what I thought he was going to do at Thanksgiving, the original would still be in my house, dry, flat, and waiting. That afternoon, I called the testing company from the parking lot behind the library. I did not ask for private results. I did not need them to break rules for me. I asked one plain question. If a report had a sample code on it, could that code be matched to the person the kit was registered under? The woman on the phone said yes. She sounded bored. That bored yes was the first clean breath I had taken in weeks. I thanked her, hung up, and sat there until my hands stopped shaking. Then I went back inside and helped a 4th grader find a book about volcanoes. He wanted the one with pictures of lava. I understood the appeal. Some things are easier to look at when they are already burning. I did not confront Evan that night. He came home carrying takeout and acting generous. He kissed the top of Katie's head in a way that looked careful instead of natural. She smiled because she still wanted small kindnesses from him. That was the part that made my throat close. Children will accept crumbs from a parent and call it dinner if they are hungry enough. After Katie went upstairs, Evan stood in the kitchen and watched me put plates in the dishwasher. "Thanksgiving is going to be important this year," he said. I closed the dishwasher door. "Important how?" He smiled like he had practiced being patient. "Just don't make it harder than it has to be." There it was again. The soft leash. "Don't make a scene, Laura." I looked at the damp counter between us. I could have said his name. I could have asked about the kit. I could have asked why he was testing children like he was sorting receipts. Instead, I dried my hands and said, "I'll make sure the table is set." He heard surrender. I meant witness. The next thing I found was in the printer tray. It was a Friday night. Katie was at a sleepover, and Evan had taken a call in the garage because he thought the walls inside the house listened better than the ones outside. I went to print a recipe my mother had sent me twice, as if pie crust could keep a family from cracking. The printer coughed out my page first. Under it was a stack of papers Evan had left behind. The top page had my full name on it. Not Laura, Laura Bennett. A person becomes very still when her whole name shows up on paper she did not ask to see. I picked it up. The words were not hard to understand. Evan had already signed. He had written his name in blue ink near the bottom, big and confident. The paper said that if one spouse had lied about a child's parentage, that spouse would leave the house during the separation. That spouse would give up control of the college account. That spouse would not challenge the first emergency custody arrangement. He had built a door and labeled it with my name. Then he signed the hinges himself. I read it twice. Not because the words were complicated, because the cruelty was so tidy. No shouting, no thrown plate, just a printed plan where my daughter became evidence, my home became a prize, and my silence was supposed to look like guilt. I made copies. I put one in the cedar box. I put one inside a cookbook. Page never opened because it did not have pictures. I put one in the glove compartment of my car. The original went back into the printer tray exactly where I had found it. If Evan wanted to believe he was careful, I had no reason to educate him. The next week, Paige started coming over as if she were already helping manage the aftermath. She brought cranberry sauce in a glass bowl and asked where I kept the good serving spoons. She moved through my kitchen with Noah on her hip, opening drawers before asking. Evan watched from the doorway with that pleased look men get when two women are supposed to be competing, and one of them has not agreed to play. Noah reached for the magnets on our refrigerator. Evan lifted him up so he could touch the top row, the row Katie used for her school photos. One picture slid sideways. Katie's fifth-grade portrait tilted until only half her face showed. I reached to straighten it. Evan caught my wrist lightly. Not hard. Just enough. Don't make a scene, Laura. Paige looked down at Noah's sock. She did not tell him to let go of my wrist. She did not tell him my daughter's picture deserved to stay straight. She just bounced her son and said, "He loves this house." For the first time, I understood the shape of it. They were not only hiding something inside my home, they were practicing how it would feel once I was pushed out of it. That night, I stopped waiting for the truth to knock. I went looking for it. I checked Evan's email again. I found a confirmation from a mobile notary service. He had booked a notary for Thanksgiving evening at 6:15. The note said, 2 signatures, domestic agreement. Witness requested. I read that line 3 times. Then I checked the guest list he had taped to the refrigerator. 14 people. My mother, Paige, Noah. Cousins Evan had ignored for years. Enough eyes to make shame feel official. He wanted me trapped between the turkey and a pen. The appointment changed the weight of everything. A private accusation can be denied later. A signature in front of family is harder to pull back. Evan was not planning a fight. He was planning a transfer. He wanted me to move out of my own life with witnesses watching. I called the notary's office from the library supply room. I gave my name because hiding would have made me sound like the kind of woman Evan was trying to create. I asked one plain question. Could a notary witness a signature if one person was being pressured, or if the facts behind the document were being openly disputed? The woman said no. She said everyone had to be willing, aware, and signing without pressure. That was all I needed. I wrote it down in plain words. If Evan turned the dining room into a trap, the pen could not save him. After that call, I made a list. It was short. I needed the original code label. I needed the printed account page. I needed Evan's signed agreement. I needed the place cards Katie had been making, because the table was going to matter, not as decoration, as proof of who he chose to shame and who the paper actually followed. I did not tell Katie. I did not tell my mother. I did not tell Paige. I did not give anyone a chance to warn Evan that I had stopped being confused. At work, I moved through my days with a strange calm. I stamped due dates. I fixed a torn spine with clear tape. I helped a little girl spell armadillo. Every small task reminded me that order was not the same as control. Order was what you did when people tried to make chaos look like truth. Evan mistook that calm for weakness. On the Monday before Thanksgiving, he asked if I had bought enough place cards. I think so, I said. Make sure Noah has one, he said. He always does now. He missed the edge in my voice. Paige would have caught it if she had been listening. But she had stopped listening to me as a person by then. She listened only for danger. And I had learned to sound harmless. That evening, Katie sat at the kitchen table with a gold marker and a stack of cream-colored cards. She wrote each name slowly. Grandma. Aunt Paige. Noah. Evan. Mom. Katie. When she wrote her own name, she drew a tiny star beside it. I almost asked her not to. Then I stopped myself. Evan had already taken enough from that child without me stealing a star before he even reached for it. I helped her place the cards in a neat stack. Noah's card ended up near Katie's. I looked at the 2 names together. For 1 second, the whole room felt too small for what I knew. The next morning, Paige came by with Noah's blue sweater folded over her arm. She said she wanted him to look nice for family pictures. She picked up his place card and smiled like she had been given something. Then she picked up Katie's card. Her face changed so quickly most people would have missed it. I did not miss it. Pretty, she said, and set Katie's name down. Not careful. Down. That was when the last small doubt left me. Paige was not worried about a report. She was waiting for one. I put the cards away after she left. Katie's on top. Noah's beneath it. The cedar box stayed behind the cookbooks with the label inside. Evan's signed paper stayed where he thought he had hidden it. The note from the notary call stayed in my handwriting, folded once in my wallet. By then the balance in the house had changed. Evan still had the envelope. Paige still had her performance. My mother still wanted quiet. But I had the number. I had his signature. I had the table he had chosen. And I had learned the most important thing before Thanksgiving ever came. Evan did not fear the truth. He feared the wrong person reading it. Thanksgiving morning began with Evan acting generous. He came downstairs early and carried the roasting pan like he had not spent 6 weeks building a trap under our roof. He asked Katie if she wanted whipped cream on the pumpkin pie later. He asked Noah if he wanted to help put napkins on the table. He asked me where the good serving knife was, though he had already set it beside the platter the night before. Paige arrived before 10 with Noah in a blue sweater and a dish she had not made. The foil still had a grocery store sticker on one corner. She kissed my mother on the cheek, kissed Evan on the cheek, then paused in front of me as if she had forgotten what sisters did. I told her the green beans could go on the stove. She smiled too brightly and said, "You're so organized, Laura." That was not a compliment. It was a little shovel. She had always used praise to dig a place for me below her. By noon, there were 14 people in my house. Coats covered the banister. Shoes lined the entryway. My mother kept moving dishes from one counter to another, as if rearranging bowls could hold the day together. Evan's cousins filled the living room with football noise. Katie hovered near me, old enough to sense the weather, young enough to hope it would pass. Noah stayed close to Evan. That detail would have broken me if I had let it. Evan kept touching the boy's shoulder. He fixed Noah's collar twice. He laughed when Noah dropped a roll and called him Buddy in that soft voice. Katie heard it. She did not say anything. She just picked up the roll and put it back on the bread plate. I looked at the clock on the microwave. 5 hours until the notary appointment Evan thought I did not know about. The envelope stayed in his jacket pocket. I saw the square corner of it when he reached for the cranberry sauce. He wanted me to see it. He wanted the fear to start before the meal did. I gave him the exact face I gave overdue notices at the library. Calm, plain, a little tired. He did not know that my father's cedar box was already in the bottom drawer of the china cabinet. He did not know the printed account page was folded inside it. He did not know the small white label was tucked under my father's watch, flat and dry, with the number still clear. At 2:30, Katie finished the place cards. She had written every name in gold marker: Grandma, Aunt Paige, Noah, Evan, Mom, Katie. The tiny star beside her own name was still there. I ran my finger near it without touching the ink. "Can I put them out?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Put yours where you want it." Evan heard that from the doorway. His mouth moved like he wanted to correct me, then he stopped. Not because he had changed. Because his real correction was waiting in an envelope. Katie set her card between mine and Evan's. Noah's card went beside Paige. For one small minute, the table told the truth better than the people around it did. Children beside the parents who were supposed to protect them. Names where they belonged. Cream paper. Gold ink. Nothing crossed out. Then Paige moved Noah's card. She did it while pretending to make room for the rolls. She slid his card closer to Evan's plate. Not far. Just enough. Noah did not notice. Katie did. Her hand froze over the forks. I said, "Leave the cards where Katie placed them." Paige blinked. Evan looked up from carving the turkey. My mother made a small sound from the stove. The old warning tried to rise through the room before Evan even said it. He said it anyway. "Don't make a scene, Laura." I looked at Paige's fingers still resting near Noah's card. "I'm not." Then I moved the card back. It was a small thing. A square of paper. A child's name. But the room felt the shift. Not the whole truth. Not yet. Just the first sign that I was not going to help them arrange the lie. Dinner was loud in the way family dinners get loud, when everyone is avoiding the one real subject. Forks tapped plates. Men talked over football. My mother asked 3 people whether they wanted more sweet potatoes. Paige kept laughing half a second late, like she was waiting for Evan's cue. Evan was pleasant enough to make the whole thing feel planned. That was the worst kind of pleasant. At 4 to 10, he touched his jacket pocket again. At 4:20, he asked if everyone could stay through dessert, because he had something important to discuss. At 4:30, my mother looked at me across the table and shook her head once, a tiny plea. Not for truth, for quiet. I did not give her either one. I stood and picked up 2 dessert plates. Katie, Noah, come help me upstairs for a minute. Evan's head turned. Paige's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. They can help with the game box, I said. Katie came at once. Noah looked at Evan first. That told me more than a child ever should have had to tell me. Evan forced a smile and nodded, because he still needed to look reasonable. Paige said Noah could stay, but I had already held out my hand. Both of them, I said. My voice did not rise. It did not need to. Noah took my hand. Upstairs, I gave them a stack of old board games from the hall closet and told Katie to pick one with missing pieces if she wanted. That made her smile a little. Noah asked if grown-ups were mad. I said grown-ups were talking about grown-up things, and none of it was his job to fix. Katie looked at me when I said that. I made sure she heard it as hers too. That was the only soft place I allowed myself that day. If you have ever had to stay calm while someone tried to turn your love into evidence against you, write the word truth in the comments. Evan thought I had just moved the children out of the way because I was scared. I had moved them because the lie was about to break, and I refused to let 2 children stand under it when it fell. I went back downstairs with empty hands. That mattered. Evan expected me to come back carrying guilt. Paige expected me to come back carrying panic. My mother expected me to come back carrying apology. I carried none of those things. The cedar box was already close enough. The children were far enough. The room was full enough. The notary had arrived while I was upstairs. She stood near the front hall with a black folder against her chest. Evan greeted her like a man receiving a package he had ordered. "We'll only need a few minutes," he said. She asked if both parties were present and willing to sign. Evan glanced at me. "They are." That small answer was his mistake. He had just put me inside the paper he thought would remove me. Paige sat straighter when the notary stepped into the dining room. My mother wiped her hands on a dish towel, though nothing was wet. The cousins quieted in stages, one conversation falling, then another. Evan did not notice how the room changed. He had waited too long for this part. He was almost glowing with it. He placed the envelope beside the pumpkin pie. Not on the sideboard. Not in the hall. Beside the pie, where everyone would see it. Then he laid the signed agreement next to it. "Before we move forward," he said, "there is something this family deserves to know." I sat down at my place. Katie's Gold Star card was still beside my plate. Noah's card was back beside Paige, exactly where Katie had first put it. I kept my hand near the edge of the table, not on the cedar box yet. Timing matters when someone has built a stage. You do not walk onto it early. You let him pull the curtain himself. Evan looked at me with a sadness he had borrowed for the occasion. I wanted to do this privately. No, he did not. He looked toward my mother. Then Paige. Then the notary. But Laura has made private honesty impossible. That was new. Not true. New. I watched Paige lower her eyes at the right time. She had practiced that too. She looked wounded without being accused. She looked brave without risking anything. For years, I had mistaken that look for pain. That day, it looked like rehearsal. Evan opened the envelope. He pulled out the DNA report. He did not unfold it all the way at first. He let people see the company logo. He let the paper become a weapon before he read a word. Then he placed one hand on the signed agreement, as if the report and the paper were already married. He said, "This is not easy for me." I almost admired the sentence. It carried no fact and still tried to collect sympathy. The notary looked from the report to the agreement. Paige held her breath. My mother whispered my name, but I did not look at her. I looked at Evan. He had chosen the table. He had chosen the audience. He had chosen to put a Child's Place card beside a lie. Now he was going to choose the words. Evan looked straight at me, lifted the DNA report and said, "You put another man's child at my table." I waited one beat. Then I said, "Read the sample name, Evan." I did not move when I said it. That was important. Evan expected a cry. Paige expected a denial. My mother expected me to beg him not to do this in front of everyone. I gave them none of those things. I kept both hands on the edge of the table and looked at the paper in Evan's hand. "Read the sample name, Evan," I said again. He blinked at me. "This is not about a sample name. It is about the child you are accusing me of lying about," I said. "So read the line." The notary shifted near the doorway. She did not step in. Not yet. She only looked at the report the way a person looks at a locked door when someone claims to have the key. Evan lowered his eyes to the page, then lifted them too fast. That was when the room began to understand before it knew why. Paige's hand moved to the stem of her water glass. Her thumb rubbed one spot on the glass until it squeaked. My mother stopped folding the dish towel in her lap. One cousin leaned forward and then sat back, like his own body had changed its mind. Nobody spoke. Not because the room was empty. Because everyone in it was suddenly waiting for one man to read one line. Evan tried to fold the report. I put my palm on the table. "No. One word." That was all it needed. His jaw moved. No sound came out. The envelope beside the pumpkin pie looked smaller than it had a minute earlier. The signed agreement looked louder. I reached down, opened the bottom drawer of the china cabinet, and took out my father's cedar box. Paige knew that box. She had seen it in my house for years. She had mocked it once, back when my father died. She called it my little museum of scraps. That day, her eyes locked on it as if the scraps had teeth. I opened the lid. I took out the white label first, a strip of paper no wider than my thumb. Then I took out the printed account page. I laid both on the table beside Katie's place card. Her name was still written in gold marker. The tiny star sat beside the K. "This is Katie's card," I said. Nobody needed that explained, but I wanted the room looking at her name, not at Evan's face. Then I moved Noah's place card beside it. "This is Noah's." Paige made a small sound. It was not a word. It was the sound a person makes when the step they thought was there is gone. I slid the white label under Noah's name. I turned the account page so the room could see the same code repeated in two places, one on the scrap Evan had thrown away, one beside Noah's registration on the testing account. I did not explain genetics. I did not use one technical word. I only pointed to the number. "The report you brought to shame Katie follows Noah's kit," I said. "Not hers." Evan looked at Paige. That was the first honest thing his face did all day. Paige's mouth opened, but she looked toward the hallway before she looked at me. The children were upstairs. I had made sure of it. Still, her eyes went there first. Not to Katie. Not to the child Evan had just accused. To Noah. The table saw it. My mother's hand covered her mouth. The dish towel fell into her lap. One woman at the far end pressed her fingers against her necklace. The notary's black folder lowered an inch against her chest. Evan said, "That doesn't prove what you think it proves." "It proves the paper you raised at my daughter was not about my daughter," I said. "Read the father listed beside that child sample." He looked down. He did not read. So I did. Alleged father, Evan Bennett. Child sample, Noah Mills. Biological father cannot be excluded. I did not say the science. I did not need to. The sentence was plain enough. The child on the report was Noah. The father attached to that child was Evan. I picked up Noah's place card and set it at the center of the table. I set Katie's beside mine. 2 cream cards. 2 children. 1 lie standing between them. That was the shape of the whole marriage, in a way no lawyer could have drawn better. Then I said the sentence Evan had earned. "I did not put another man's child at your table. Paige put your child at mine." Paige grabbed the back of her chair. Her nails pressed into the wood. Evan's face emptied so quickly it looked unfinished. My mother whispered, "Oh, God," and pushed back from the table. Someone in the living room turned the television down until the football announcer disappeared. I did not look proud. I did not feel proud. I felt tired in a clean way. The notary stepped forward then. "I can't witness signatures under these conditions." Evan held the report closer to his chest. The notary did not argue. She only looked at the agreement, and then at me. "There is an open dispute, and one party appears to be under pressure. I will not notarize this." Her voice was even, almost boring. That made it worse for Evan. He said, "We are not signing anything now." "No," she said. "You are not." Then she closed the black folder. It was a small sound. Leather against paper. But it landed harder than shouting would have. The door Evan had built for me had shut in his own face. Paige tried to stand. Her chair scraped back. My mother reached for her, then stopped before touching her arm. That small stop told me my mother had finally seen Paige without the fog around her. Paige said, "Laura, please." It was the first time all day she had said my name, like I was a person in the room. I did not answer her. I looked toward the stairs because I heard a floorboard creak. Katie stood at the doorway in her socks. Noah was behind her with a game box held against his chest. They had heard enough to know the grown-ups were no longer pretending. Katie's eyes went straight to her place card beside me. I stood up slowly. I walked to her and put my hand on her shoulder. I did not pull her into the room. I did not turn her toward Evan. I kept my body between my daughter and the table. Noah looked around my arm at Paige, then at Evan, then down at the game box. Katie asked, "Can we go upstairs now?" That question did more damage than anything I had said, because it made the whole room remember she was 12. Not proof. Not leverage. Not a name on a report. 12. "Yes," I said. "We can." Evan took one step toward us. "Katie." She moved closer to me. His foot stopped. That was the moment he understood. Not the code, not the agreement, not even Noah's name beside the sample. He understood that the child he had planned to use as a weapon had just chosen distance from him without anyone telling her to. I turned back to the notary. "Please mark that he brought the agreement himself." She nodded once. "I will make a note that I declined to witness the signing, because the document was disputed and the setting was coercive." Evan stared at me then. Really stared. For the first time in weeks, maybe years, he looked at me without the little film of confidence he wore over everything. He saw the woman who had packed lunches, found missing socks, paid Paige's repair bills, and saved one small label because her father had taught her not to throw away originals. He had mistaken quiet for empty. The room had not. Paige sat back down as if her knees had folded without permission. My mother still had the dish towel in her lap. Nobody reached for dessert. Nobody asked for coffee. The pie beside Evan's envelope had a knife resting across it, clean and unused. I picked up Katie's place card. I picked up Noah's. I did not tear either one. I set Noah's card beside Paige. I set Katie's in my hand. Then I closed my father's cedar box and held it against my ribs. Evan said my name. "Laura." I looked at him. He had many words behind his eyes. Explanations. Corrections. Requests. Maybe even an apology trying to dress itself quickly enough to be useful. I did not wait for any of them. "You wanted witnesses," I said. "Now you have them." Then I walked upstairs with my daughter. Evan left the house that night with one suitcase. Not two. Not a dramatic stack by the door. One black suitcase with a broken wheel. Because even in the middle of a family collapse, ordinary things keep being ordinary. He packed in the guest room, while Katie sat on my bed with her knees under my old quilt. Noah stayed downstairs with Paige until my mother drove them home. Nobody asked me to make coffee. Nobody asked where the leftovers went. The turkey stayed on the counter too long. By midnight, the house smelled like cold gravy and furniture polish. I threw out what needed throwing out. I wrapped the pie and put it in the refrigerator. Then I took Katie's Gold Star place card from my pocket and set it on my nightstand. She watched me do it. "Is Dad coming back tonight?" she asked. "No," I said. She nodded like she had expected that answer and hated that she was right. The first consequence came quietly. Evan's signed agreement did not remove me from the house. It removed his ability to pretend he had not planned to remove me. He had brought the paper. He had brought the accusation. He had brought the witnesses. By the next week, the spare key he used to keep on his ring sat alone in a small dish by the front door. He had left it there without looking at me. That is the problem with choosing an audience. Sometimes the audience remembers. Within 2 weeks, Evan moved into a furnished apartment near the interstate. The house stayed with Katie and me while the separation moved through the slow machinery of adults who use plain folders for ugly things. My attorney did not need to make Evan sound cruel. The papers and the witness note did that in a much calmer voice. The college account he had tried to control was locked under my authority. He could still contribute to it. He could not touch it. That mattered to me more than the house for a while. A house is wood and wiring. A college account is a promise to a child that her future will not be used as punishment. Evan did not become poor. This is not that kind of story. He still had his job. He still had his suits. He still had the easy voice he used on strangers. But he lost the part he had expected to keep, the right to stand in the center of our family and decide what everyone else had to believe. He also had to face Noah. I will not tell that child's story like it belongs to me. It does not. Noah was not a twist. He was a little boy who liked board games with missing pieces and still called ketchup a vegetable. But Evan could no longer treat him like a secret that visited on weekends. Paige could no longer float in and out of my house with a blue sweater and a smile. Whatever they had buried had come up in front of the people they had counted on fooling. Paige texted me the next morning. The first message said, "Please let me explain." The second said, "You don't understand what happened." The third said, "I never meant to hurt Katie." That last one sat on my phone for a long time. I read it while Katie ate cereal at the kitchen counter. She was wearing Evan's old college sweatshirt because children do not stop needing comfort just because the person who hurt them gave it to them once. I wrote back one sentence. Anything about the children goes through a written schedule. Paige called after that. I did not answer. She came by once and stood on the porch with red eyes and a paper bag from a bakery. I could see her through the small window beside the door. For years, I would have opened it because she looked sad. That morning, I did not open it because she had looked sad on purpose too many times. She left the bag on the step. I threw it away. That sounds colder than it felt. It did not feel like revenge. It felt like not eating food someone brought after helping set your table on fire. My mother lasted 3 days before she asked me not to split the family. She said it over the phone in a careful voice. The same voice she used when Paige was fragile and I was expected to be durable. I let her finish. Then I said, "The family split when everyone watched my daughter become evidence and waited to see if I would stay polite." My mother cried. I did not. Not because I had no feeling left. Because her tears were not instructions anymore. She wanted Thanksgiving to become an accident, a bad night, a terrible misunderstanding with too much emotion and too many people. I would not give it that soft name. Evan planned it. Paige knew enough to stand beside it. My mother wanted quiet more than she wanted protection. Those facts did not make me cruel. They made me clear. Evan asked to talk alone the week before Christmas. I agreed to meet at a public park near Katie's school. Public mattered. Daylight mattered. Benches mattered. A person who has been cornered at her own table learns to choose where she sits. He looked thinner. He also looked annoyed that looking thinner did not fix anything. He said he panicked. He said Paige had confused him. He said he had started to doubt everything. He said the agreement was just to protect himself. He said the words, "my daughter," 3 times after spending Thanksgiving trying to take those words away from her. I listened. When he finished, I said, "You can become a stable father through steady actions. You cannot become my husband again through one sad conversation." He put his hands over his face. For a second, I saw the man I had once loved under all that pride. That made it harder. Not confusing. Harder. There is a difference. I did not hate him. Hate would have kept a chair for him at my table forever. I did not want that chair occupied by his shadow. I wanted it gone. So I forgave him in the only way that was honest for me. I stopped rehearsing speeches he would never deserve to hear. I stopped trying to make him understand the exact size of the wound. I let the wound be real without making it my address. But I did not take him back. By the next Thanksgiving, Katie and I had changed the table. We did not host 14 people. We did not polish every serving spoon. We did not set a place for anyone who believed family meant access without accountability. Katie asked if we could eat in the kitchen instead of the dining room. I said yes. We made roasted chicken because neither of us wanted turkey. We burned the carrots a little. We ate them anyway. Katie made 2 place cards. One said Mom. One said Katie. She put a gold star beside both names. That was the warmest thing that year gave me. After dinner, Katie asked if we could keep the cards. She did not say why. I did not ask her to make the feeling smaller by explaining it. I opened my father's cedar box and let her place both cards inside. She set them on top of his watch and her first library card. Then she closed the lid with both hands, like the box was not just holding paper anymore. My father's cedar box moved from behind the cookbooks to the open shelf by the kitchen window. For a while, I had looked at it only as the place that held proof. Later, it became something else again. I put my father's watch back inside. I put Katie's first library card back inside. Then I placed the gold star card from that first Thanksgiving on top of them. Not as evidence. As a reminder. My father had taught me to keep originals because truth gets tired when people handle it too much. I used to think that meant papers. Now I think it means people too. If you let everyone rewrite you long enough, one day you wake up and cannot find your own name in the story. I found mine. A boundary is not revenge. It is the place where your life stops being used as someone else's cover story. Family is not the longest table. It is not the loudest person saying blood. It is the hand that moves a child out of harm's way. It is the person who tells the truth when silence would be easier. It is 2 place cards in a small kitchen, both with stars, and nobody reaching over to move them. That is family. That's my story: 1 Thanksgiving table, 2 children's place cards, 1 cedar box, and 1 DNA report my husband should have read before he used it to break our home. If someone has ever asked you to stay quiet so their lie could keep looking respectable, I want you to hear this clearly. You do not have to perform guilt to prove you are kind. You do not have to keep a chair open for someone who used it to make you smaller. Share this story with someone who needs permission to set the table differently. Tell me in the comments what you would have done when Evan put that DNA report beside the pie. And subscribe if you want more stories about truth, dignity, and the kind of peace that does not require you to disappear.